Hello, everybody. Welcome, one. Welcome, all. Welcome back to the Bleav in Iowa State podcast. My name is Tyler Carter,
And my name is Cody Vancy Lalo.
and we have a special episode today. We're taking a break from football to talk about women's volleyball. Women's
Yes, sir.
volleyball. This is an up and coming sport, just in just the college landscape in general.
hmm
One of the things that caught my eye last year, Cody, was just like not just Iowa State, but just Nebraska when they filled Memorial Stadium, and that stadium had over 100,000 people. I'm like, man, I'm like that really is a testament to the popularity of women's volleyball growing in the college landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Nebraska for ever since I was born has been a staple in college volleyball. That coach there, John Cook, has been there since essentially I was born. So over the past 20 plus years, Nebraska volleyball has grown to be one of the biggest brands for women's sports. And
Hmm.
seeing Nebraska do their volleyball day in Nebraska filling out Memorial Stadium was such a great sight to see. And it shows the progress of not just the sport of college volleyball, but women's sports in general, because it kind of set a precedent, if you want to kind of say it that way, to what we've seen. Obviously, as much as I hate them, the team out east, they had their thing when it came to women's basketball, and that sold out pretty well. So yeah, it just shows the growth of women's sports overall, and it just shows the overall growth of volleyball.
Yeah, man, I completely agree. It's an up and coming sport, and just it's definitely a sport that I definitely am excited to learn more about this upcoming season. So let's talk about some of the new players. We have Shea Pearson coming in as the from at the middle blocker position.
Yes,
Uh,
that is correct.
yeah, and can you tell me a little bit more about her and what she'll bring to the team?
So, her being a middle blocker, she's gonna be kind of like a more like defensive style player. Since middle blockers are typically taller, they're able to jump a little higher. They have longer reaches, so she'll be able to bring a level of defense to the squad. But she can
Mhm.
also come in like if needed for like a middle slide. Last season, we saw a lot of that when it's Jordan Hop. She had a really good middle slide. So if we see something like that as Shea Pearson, it'll be great.
Nice, nice. And then we also have Rachel Van Gorp, which is the business is libero or outside hitter.
Yeah, it's pronounced libero. I think
Oh,
you have
libero. Okay.
yeah. So you technically are correct, because I've heard like I think the NCAA has tried to make it libero as like a official pronunciation, but most people call it libero. Just it's Italian for defensive specialist, so that's where that comes in. Also as an outside hitter, so Rachel can easily flex as one of those two positions based on the need for the team and what rotation they're in.
Okay, that's actually that sounds very interesting. Um, and then we also have Emily Bobbitt, who is the setter.
hmm Yeah, so I just wanted to just give a quick rundown of all these positions. So we've hit middle
Yeah.
blocker, we've hit libero, outside hitter, setter. So setters are kind of like the quarterback of the team, if you will. They
Hmm.
kind of place the ball where the outside, like where that needs to be in order for the outside hitters to hit where they need to go. So they're the ones who are going to be like kind of talking to the team, what plays they're running, where to be, like set the defense and whatnot. So basically, they are the ones constantly analyzing where the ball is, how to adjust to it, and how to get it to their hitters. And then you have your outside hitters, and you have a couple other names for outside hitter as well. You also have right sides and opposite hitters. So yeah, right side is typically where you would go as a setter to the right side, and then the opposite hitter is as what you think it is to the opposite side of the court. And then you also have for your defensive positions libero, we mentioned earlier, and defense specialist. Now, here is a unique quirk when it comes to the libero position. They are the ones that usually wear a different uniform, and that's
Hmm.
because they are not allowed to like attack from the front row. So if you look at a volleyball court, you might see like a couple lines. There's one that like marks like the 10 foot or 10 yard line or 10 foot line. So
Right.
liberos typically can't attack from beyond that. They can only pass it up. I think there's been a few times we've seen a libero kill. Those are very rare, but when those happen, those are some very exciting plays for the libero. And then defensive specialist is what you expect, somebody who's very nimble and very defensive oriented, can get to
Mm-hmm.
a say like a rough ball or something, like a ball that's like an arid ball. They can be able to recover that for the team and get their team back in the system. And then middle blockers, as I mentioned earlier, are kind of like the defensive, like really defensive players, but can also be attackers.
So, as to someone like me who's a newbie, so like when you're watching like volleyball matches, are like the setters the ones who set up the shot during a volley? Like,
Yeah, pretty much. So whenever you receive your team receives a serve, for example, or you're in a rally, you typically will have one player that hits it up, and then the setter kind of takes the second hit. So you're allowed 3 touches
yeah,
um as a team. So and you can't touch it twice in a row. But what you can do is you can have one player touch it, pass it up to the setter sets it up, and then either that same player who just passed it to the setter or somebody else can hit it.
okay. This is
Mhm.
actually very, very, very insightful. All right, so
Yeah.
let's move on to some transfers that we had. We had Tierney Jackson who transferred to West Virginia, and then we had Amory Hendricks Walker who transferred to USF.
Yeah. So actually, Tierney Jackson was the first transfer to be announced from Coach Chris Johnson Lynch for the Cyclones volleyball squad. So, well, I'll get to later, but we did like our graduating class were mostly like middle blockers, so it definitely was a need for the team. And getting somebody like Tierney Jackson has been it's pretty good for the squad because she's an in conference transfer. Now, I know some feelings that people have for in conference transfers, but I mean, if it's a fit for the player and a fit for the team, then they'll go for it. So, in her 2 seasons at West Virginia, um, she saw quite a bit of action for the Mountaineers. In
Mm-hmm.
as a sophomore, she put up 83 blocks, so 7 solo blocks and 76 assists, while totaling the fourth most kills on the team with 199 kills at hitting percentage of .228. Now, for any player, generally you're looking for a hitting percentage of like .2 and above. That's
Mm-hmm.
pretty solid. If you can get up to like maybe like like if you get like in that .28 to .31, you're hitting pretty well. That's a pretty well hit game. It's very rare to go past like .35, but that's just like if you're really excelling at the game. So for a middle blocker, having a hitting percentage of approximately .23, that's pretty good. In addition to that, she also had 62 digs and 14 aces and put up 7 or more total blocks in 5 matches.
Mm, those are
Mhm.
pretty impressive numbers.
Yeah,
And that's for Tierney Jackson, right?
correct. Correct.
And then tell us a little bit more about Amory Hendricks Walker.
All right, so Amiri Hendricks Walker is another middle blocker. She comes from the University of South Florida. So as so she spent the last couple of seasons at USF. And in that time period, as a freshman, she led the team with blocks with 95 blocks
Mm-hmm.
total, including 21 solo blocks, and also ranked fourth on the team with 172 kills. And then, yeah, so this is 2022. And
Mm-hmm.
during that time period, she also finished fifth in the conference, the American Athletic Conference, and first on the team with 1.08 blocks per set. So, Amir, Amir Hendricks is bringing in even more defense. And I actually got to go to spring volleyball. So, spring
Yeah.
volleyball is kind of like a time to get the new players acclimated with the roster and whatnot, like the transfers or early freshmen coming in for spring. In the case of Natalie Gonzalez, before last season, so we got to see a preview of her before regular season play. And from what I saw, Amiri Hendricks Walker was very impressive. She stood
Mm.
out pretty well. Like she was getting up, getting up to blocks. She was timing
Mm-hmm.
them pretty well. She read exactly where the opponents were going for the attack. And I mean, yeah, she's very impressive, and I'm very excited to see where this middle blocking room it goes because not just those two, but also Pam McCune, incoming sophomore who was on the Cyclones
Hmm.
team last year, who saw some playing time. I'm very excited for this middle blocking room.
It should be interesting to see how this team develops. Um, so let's talk about departures
Hmm.
from just graduating and the transfer portal. So for graduation, we had Jordan Hop. She's going to grad school at Penn State. And then we have Annie Hatch, who is playing pro volleyball match for Sense Valley 89. So we
Hmm.
wish her the best of luck in her new
Absolutely.
opportunities.
Yeah.
We also have um, Alexis Engelbrecht, who is attending grad school at North Carolina.
Right. Yeah. So definitely this class, that class of seniors were very fun to
Hmm.
watch. I got to watch them a lot. As you can tell, I basically went to every single one of those games. And what I saw, they all brought something different to the table. I mean, Annie Hatch was bringing like a sense of security blanket, like she was very vocal.
Hmm.
She was like a kind of leader for the group. Alexis Engelbrecht was very good on the defensive end, and she was able to get a few like kills here and there. So she is kind of like a two-way player. And then Jordan Hop, as I mentioned earlier, has one of the best middle slides in the game of volleyball. Like when you see her go for a middle slide, she's very precise with where she puts the ball. And if you aren't ready for that, then she's gonna put it like right on the boundary line to where, and that's an easy kill for the Cyclones. And yes, Jordan Hop going to Penn State. Penn State is a very decorated program. They're one of the best programs in the Big Ten. If you don't include Nebraska and Wisconsin, they've won national championships. I believe their most recent national championship was in 2008. So this is a
Hmm.
very solid program and a very good place for Jordan to perhaps go pro. Like if she's getting picked up by Penn State, Penn State was calling her name, then that means that Jordan's doing something right with her career. And as for Alexis Engelbrecht, she is originally from North Carolina. She spent her last 4 years in Ames, decided to go back to her home state to
Hmm.
possibly play with in front of her close friends and family. So I sent my messages to both Jordan and Alexis about them going to grad school. Wish them the best of luck there. And obviously Annie Hatch playing pro volleyball in in France. Maybe one
Yeah,
day I'll get to see Annie play pro volleyball here in the States because we now have two professional volleyball leagues here in the United States.
that would be amazing to see.
For
And
sure.
like that's those are just amazing to me.
Hmm.
And I just want to thank these seniors just for their contributions that they have given to Iowa State. Now let's talk about some departures from the transporter. We did lose Addie Heiderman, who went to App State.
Mm. Yeah, I think this one I like looked at it. I was like, I very understood because she's just like more another person on the current roster, Morgan Brandt. They're both setters, and clearly Morgan Brandt just stood out as the better setter. Addie
Hmm.
Heidemann never really got that much playing time compared to Morgan Brandt, so it's understandable why she decided to transfer out. Morgan Brandt is younger than Addie Heidemann, and Morgan was going to get way more playing time than her. So it's understandable that she decides to into the transfer portal and and to find a place where she can get prominent playing time. So props to her for doing what's best for her career.
Yeah, sometimes it just doesn't work out. So, but you got to go.
Mhm.
What you got to do? What's best for you. Now
Yep.
let's get into this roster. You brought up spring volleyball,
Mhm.
and that opportunity. Can you like sort of give some of the fans more of an in depth look at what spring volleyball entails? Is it like
Yeah,
a
so
spring type of like a spring football sort of like, or like to see what the roster's like? Or
yeah, so it functions kind of like spring football where you basically are figuring out like kind of like where like what your starting rotation is going to be, who's going to see a good amount of playing time. You're just trying to figure out where players can play best and at different positions. So it does work like spring football. So throughout the spring season, they'll host like a number like they'll do like a number of games. I think they have spring tournament in Hilton Coliseum that's free to attend for Cyclone fans, and then they also go to like a couple of other places to play spring ball. And overall, it's just a great opportunity for the players, not only to kind of I guess you could say relax in a way because
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
not really like you're not playing for anything like too significant, but you're still playing for like playing time, starting rosters, and just yeah. And it's also a good opportunity for the coaches to kind of get acclimated. Maybe they want to try something different, then they can try it then and see what works, see what doesn't work, and make adjustments to that in order to make it the best version of whatever they're trying to game plan.
That sounds like a very interesting concept. I'm very, very. I would love to go to one of these events one time. Now let's get
Mhm.
into both. We already talked. I brought up Nayeli Gonzalez. Let's talk about her and what accolades that she accumulated last season.
Yeah, Nyla Gonzalez was definitely like the star player of our roster. You talk
Hmm.
about her freshman year. It was so like decorated. I mean, she was the first freshman in Iowa State history to earn All American honors and nor first team Big 12 recognition. She was also named the AVCA American Volleyball Coaches Association region
Hmm.
freshman of the year, and she was also selected as the Big 12 Rookie of the Year. So that says something about the impact that Nyla Gonzalez had for the roster. So stats wise, she took down the freshman points record, totaling 409.5 points. Now that is broken up in between, like, so basically it's like kills, digs, aces, and all that kind of like build up, and they'll have different values for points. So she
Yeah.
took I, so yeah, she had a really impressive freshman year, and then she had 31 kills and had 36 points versus Kansas on November 10th of last year. So that's very impressive. And in fact, it was the first 30 plus kill or point match by an Iowa State Cyclone since 2008. And those
Oh
totals
wow.
are also, yeah, and those totals are also the highest set by a freshman. So, and highest in the rally scoring era and the fourth highest of all time. She also set a top 10 all time kill total with 28 kills versus Cincinnati, which puts her tied at 10th. So
Hmm.
there's a lot to say. There's a lot. If I was to mention every single thing about Nia Gonzalez's freshman year, I'd probably be here all day, all night. But yeah, she had a really big freshman year, and I expect her to do even better coming up this year. Now that she has a year of Big 12 volleyball under her belt.
Yeah, I mean, the first year I always was sort of tell you a little bit of the story about how their career is going to turn out. The
Mhm.
future seems bright for Iowa State volleyball. Let's talk about Maya Duckworth.
Yeah. So Maya Duckworth is another player to look out for. I mean, she kind of got overshadowed by Nelly Gonzalez's year, but Maya Duckworth is definitely like in that like let's say like our top like four, like in the top 4 or 5 players on our volleyball squad. You look at her. So in her sophomore year last year, she started in 24 matches and played in 103 sets across 28 matches after returning from injury. Now that injury was very early in the season, so she didn't play like in the early non-con games. Just she was like rehabbing an injury. It looked like it was like something in her leg, so it might have been like a calf strain or an ankle strain, or something like that. It's very common for volleyball players to get like those lower body injuries just because of how high they like jump and how much impact they brace for when they come down.
Got it.
Yep. And
Now
then
what?
yeah, she what's up?
Oh no, go ahead.
Yeah. So outside of that, she ranked second on the team with 316 kills and third on the team with 23 aces. And she had 17 double figure kill performances and 6 double doubles in terms of kills and digs. She set a career high of 20 kills and 17 digs versus Cincinnati on November 25th. And she had 5 aces in the NCAA tournament first round game versus Hawaii, which is the highest single match tournament total in school history. She also led
Hmm.
the team in kills 11 times. She's also hit 17 kills and hit at a very impressive 441 hitting percentage and added 10 digs. And that was at West Virginia. So that just shows you how like very talented Maya is.
Maya looks like she's going to be a great contributor for this Iowa State team. I'm really, really excited to watch this team grow. Now
Absolutely.
let's look into this non-con invites. So there's three of them. We have the UNLV invite, the Cyclone Invitational, and the South Dakota Classic. If you want to go in depth about those, that'd be greatly
Yeah.
appreciated.
Yeah. So for the first non-conference, I forgot to put in here. We usually have a Cardinal and Gold scrimmage as well. So that's kind of like
Oh,
an
right.
inter team. Yeah. So that's like an inter team scrimmage, just for the audience to get like the first preview of the team if they didn't go to spring ball, for example. And then they play an exhibition game versus Minnesota. And Minnesota's a pretty solid they're a solid middle of the pack Big Ten team. So that's going to be some good experience for the newcomers and just for the team in general. And with that said, I want to talk about the UNLV invite. Now, I just looked up teams that are going to be in this um, invite. It's going to be Pacific and UNLV. I don't know too much about these teams, but from like kind of what I understand and what I looked at, I think Iowa State should be able to take care of business when it comes to the UNLV invite. So they should be able to take care of business there. And then
And
taking a
this,
look at these Invitational. What's up?
yeah, I'm about to say it's going to be interesting to see how they fare in that South Dakota Classic. How interesting.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So then before that, we have the Cyclone Invitational. We're going to be inviting Toledo, Wake Forest, and Illinois. I think what I could see is perhaps like maybe Illinois gives us like a little bit of trouble because they are from the Big Ten, and the Big Ten is like a very volleyball heavy conference. So I wouldn't be surprised if Illinois gives us some trouble. But I think other than that, Wake Forest and Toledo, the team should be able to take care of business. We just have to see how the team is and just their chemistry. That's just what it comes down to. I think these are like all these like non-conference like tournaments and invitationals are all great opportunities for the team to build chemistry heading into Big 12 play. And then finally, I get to the South Dakota Classic. Yeah, I'm very interested to see how this goes. UTEP, South Dakota, and Montana State. Again, more opportunities to build team chemistry and for coaches to figure out what works and what doesn't, and for them to make adjustments. And then I missed a couple of games as well here in terms of Colgate and Syracuse all on the road. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the new players like the freshmen especially how they adapt to like the traveling schedule and all because we saw this bringing another Iowa State sport. We saw this women's basketball how
Right.
that traveling schedule really messes with your circadian rhythm
Sure
because
does.
we had that little bit of a slump if you will
Mm-hmm.
kind of that mid-season slump of the Big 12 play, and that's just because the girls they weren't really used to like traveling that much. I mean, you're sleeping on basically chartered airplanes, but that's still traveling like distance, like a long distance. You're up like until basically like 1 or 2 in the morning, depending on what time your game is. So
Right.
we'll just have to see how they adapt to that. But I'm pretty sure that the coaching staff will be able to help out, and the nutrition staff and everybody that's like behind the scenes of the team is going to be able to help this team be in the best position possible for game day.
Hey, anytime, any way that you can get in prime position, that's the best thing for this team. Now let's talk about Cyhawk. I know you said that you had a blast at this game last year. How are these matches usually?
Yeah, so I'm so 2 years ago we actually hosted Cyhawk in Ames. This was kind of like one of my first experiences of Hilton Magic and being a big Cyclone fan. We actually were able to take care of business against Iowa, and it was just one of the best atmospheres for a volleyball game. It was, I mean, the lower deck was basically filled because it's obviously
Mm,
Cyhawk is the biggest game, like non-con game, and the biggest thing for the state of Iowa. Now,
right.
last year I had the opportunity to go to Iowa City with a couple of friends and we decided to go to Cyhawk because I think it was Wednesday. So we figured, hey, let's just go. It's kind of like a take in the day trip because we finished classes relatively early. So we decided why not after all our classes are done, we just head to Iowa City and support the volleyball team because we figured the tickets were pretty cheap as well. So it was pretty easy to get them. And we got really good seats. We were like right behind our team bench. So it was really fun to see our team just they they love us. They love the support that we give them, and it clearly showed in that game. Now, that Cyhawk game, we actually went down. I Bleav it was 2-0 in terms of sets. So volleyball games are always like, I think it's like first to 3 sets, and Iowa State was actually down to nothing. Iowa just was looking like impenetrable, but we were eventually able to figure out what needed to be adjusted. We found some very important tools. We got picked up some great performances from Kirsten Schmidt, especially in the 4th set. That set was all hers. And then Maya Duckworth was another standout. So those 2 players were really the standouts for that game in order for Iowa State to pick up the win. So it's going to be nice to bring it back to Ames, bring it back to Hilton Coliseum, and now it's the freshmen, the new players. They're going to get their first taste of Hilton Magic, and I think it's going to be a great experience for them.
I'm excited to see just how this team fares and how they improve over the season. Now
Mhm.
let's get into Big 12 play. We're going to break down the home and home matchups first. We have K State, Houston, Kansas, and Texas Tech.
Yeah. So Kansas State, unfortunately, they were one of the teams that Iowa State kind of struggled to deal with. I mean, we went to Manhattan. We kind of got our backsides handed to us by the
Yeah.
Wildcats, and it was kind of like an upset. So we did struggle on the road against Kansas State last season. So it would be nice to get some revenge there, especially since we get to play them at home because we only played them on the road last year. So if I'm not mistaken, yeah, because it was like the first time we brought in the then new teams of BYU, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston. And I'll get to Houston right now. So Houston last year, we actually we pulled off another upset. So they were ranked, I Bleav, number 19 at the time. We were unranked at the time. This was kind of towards the end of the year. But Houston was a team we were able to pick up a win against, and me and my buddies actually had a recurring joke about that game. So one of the players that graduated from Houston last year was Kenna Sauer. Now she is an Ankeny, Iowa product, but instead of going to the Cyclones, she decided to go to Texas Tech for a few years and then went down to Houston for, I Bleav, her last year. So me and my buddies were just making a bunch of jokes about her and her performance, and we would just like troll her on Twitter and whatnot because of it. Yeah, because it's like, really, you had a very good volleyball program literally 20 minutes north of you, and you decided to go to Texas Tech and Houston. We were just like, why? It made no sense. But I mean, hey, it is what it is. It doesn't really matter. And yeah, so
Shame.
finally, yeah, yeah, it's just a weird thing. But I mean, I'm guessing Texas Tech was probably like a better fit for her. So whatever. But
Oh
it's just
yeah,
a shame.
yeah,
Yeah, we're just putting it euphemistically. But
for
anyways,
sure.
not to the other school in the state of Kansas, the Jayhawks. Now we actually had a back-to-back series. So this was something that last season. These are kind of like how it works, just because of how like relatively light in terms of like physical contact you make in volleyball. It's much easier to do like games like back-to-back, or do maybe like a 3-game series. It just depends on how the schedule works. Because that was what I saw last year. That's a little confusing at first, but once you figure out like how they do back-to-back games, series, and whatnot, because usually that's how like they do tiebreakers, I Bleav, because you could possibly play like teams multiple times, and if you do better than them and you have the same record as them in the Big 12 standings, it could play a role into your seeding of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, because these are times where uh, we got to get these wins are going to be crucial in Big
Mhm.
12 play if we want to make the
Mm.
tournament.
Yeah.
Now let's look at our home only matchups. Well, let's talk about BYU, West Virginia, Cincinnati, Colorado, and Utah.
All right. So the big highlight that I'm seeing right now is BYU. Now, last year, BYU was persistently ranked. They were a top 10 program, and they were one of the programs alongside of Texas that would have been like, so last year, uh, we had a couple of programs that were like very consistent. So that was Texas, obviously, the national
Hmm.
champions. You had BYU as another consistently ranked program. Kansas was consistently up there with the
Yeah.
kind of middle of the ranking tier. So they're still like a pretty good tier. They're not like at the elite tier of college volleyball, but they're like kind of like a couple
Hmm.
pecks up below. And then Houston, and then Baylor, and then Iowa State. Now the Big 12 in general, when it came to volleyball, was pretty solid, but it was like kind of like above average besides Texas. So and BYU
Mm.
maybe, but yeah, the BYU is going to be really fun to play because obviously we went to Provo last year. Unfortunately, it looked like for a moment Iowa State could have kept it competitive for a while with BYU, but BYU Aaron Aaron Livingston, that was the star player for BYU. They were just not going to lose that day, and they have a really good home court. Their home court is one of the best home courts that I've seen in all of college volleyball.
Yeah, that just fan base in general is just rapid, especially in that
Hmm.
the Marriott Arena.
Hmm. Yeah, and looking at the rest of our home only games, West Virginia and the West Virginia one. This one's actually going to be marked on my calendar because what's funny about this one is it's our first Big 12 game, and it's also a reunion of sorts for Tierney Jackson, who we mentioned earlier picked up from
Right.
West Virginia. So it's going to be kind of like a reunion, if you will, for her and West Virginia. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, it's just with all with the transport, you're gonna see a lot of more reunions as some sort. So it's gonna be exciting to see all the former Cyclones come back and face them in friendly competition.
Yeah, of
Now
course.
let's talk about the away only matchups. We got Baylor, UCF, TCU, Arizona, and Arizona State.
Oh, yeah, and before you get to that, we forgot to mention
Oh,
Cincinnati, Colorado, and Utah were all
oh, right.
um
Sorry.
yeah, they're all also all home only matchups. I'm interested to see how Colorado and Utah are when it comes to volleyball because I haven't heard too much about their
Hmm.
volleyball programs. And obviously Cincinnati had their first year here and they were like, eh, they were okay at best. They had some ups, they had some downs, and that's just usually what happens with teams joining new conferences. And we forgot to mention Texas Tech at a home and home. Now I
Oh
remember,
yeah,
yeah, remember last year, Texas Tech. I got to go to that game because that was the game. I think that was the day before the Jack Trice Legacy game. So that game, I was just like, you know what? Volleyball gives me an opportunity just to wear something a little more lax. So I just decided to wear a costume to it because why not? I just decided to wear a costume to that game just to have fun, and I'm pretty sure it went pretty well.
I mean, you might as well, Cody. You
Yeah.
might as well.
Uh huh. Hmm. Yes. All right, so now we got that out of
Oh,
the way. Yeah, let's go back to our away only games. So our away only, as you mentioned, Baylor, UCF, TCU, and then the Arizona schools. Now Baylor, we actually hosted them here, and we went to Waco, so that was a home and home last season.
right.
And in our like our home stint against Baylor, we actually did a whiteout, and it was done pretty. Like I say, it was a solid job. The fans did a pretty solid job with it, and we actually came away with the win. So I think Baylor was ranked as well. So Iowa State, we just tend to pick up like ranked wins, even just right like out of nowhere. I mean, it's really kind of like, it's really not like too familiar for people to like truly figure out who's gonna like be the winner, like who's like the favorite and whatnot. That's just not a usual thing. But when you see a ranked team coming into your building, it's an extra piece of motivation for you to win that game.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
that's dope.
then with UCF, and then UCF. Now that trip to Orlando is going to be interesting because I mentioned earlier Amir Hendricks Walker is a transfer
Hmm.
from USF, and obviously she definitely played against the Knights in conference play in the American, and that was the last
Right.
year that UCF was in the American before they joined the Big 12. So Miri has some connection with the Knights, so I'm very interested to see what has changed over the 2 years and see if she knows some familiar faces on the Knights' roster.
Yeah. Anytime you have a familiar opponent from another
Hmm.
conference, that's just like also just a good way, just to scout that opponent and hey, maybe you'll be able to pick up some of their tendencies.
Yep. Then the two Arizona schools, I mean Arizona and Arizona State. Now that's going to be a back-to-back trip, so the girls are going to be spending some time in Arizona. Now, obviously, the weather is going to be like much better there. And that time, I Bleav it's in like mid-November. It's gonna be better there than here in Iowa, but I'm pretty sure they're still gonna lock in. They're gonna take in a lot of sites around the state of Arizona, but they're obviously gonna take care of business against Arizona and Arizona State. I think a trip down to the Arizona is never fun. I mean, it doesn't matter what
Yeah.
sport you're in. You're not. That's a rough trip for anybody, and I can probably say the same for the trip down to the two Arizona schools.
I'm sure, yeah, because just like uh, you're like, especially coming from the Midwest, you're already 2 hours behind, so that's like a little bit of a lag. Like all you like your circadian rhythm is thrown off, like you said before earlier in the show. So it's just
Mhm.
going just to the West in general as a Midwesterner is crazy. It just throws your whole body out of whack. It's nuts.
Right.
Now let's go on to predictions. Um,
Yeah.
Now we both expect this team to finish in half in the conference and to be a tournament team. Um,
Yeah.
and then we also need to talk about postseason skills. First, let's talk about our regular season standings. Where do you think the Cyclones will end up when the season ends?
I mean, looking at the schedule that we have, I mean, you get rid of Texas, and they were basically like the big bad wolf of the Big 12 conference. So getting rid of
Right.
them, you basically the conference is no longer just a straight shot for like for one team being Texas. You actually have a pretty wide open conference. I mean, BYU is probably the leading dog when it comes to that race, but I could also see Baylor
Mm-hmm.
making a run for the title. Perhaps I mean, you perhaps could put Kansas there because they did go to the tournament and they took it right down to the wire against Penn State, so they can make a run. Perhaps, and maybe Houston, and then of course Iowa State. I think all five of those teams have a pretty solid case for winning the Big 12 title.
Okay. That should be it. Like conference play, definitely it will be interesting, and definitely the non-con schedule will definitely give us a lot of tests. Considering in a lot of these tournaments, we're going to be facing a lot of Big Ten foes.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about goals for the postseason. What are some goals that we should try to attain during this postseason?
I mean, Iowa State has consistently under Coach Christy Johnson Lynch has been an NCAA tournament team. The last 2 years have not been able to get out of the first round. Well, that's because 2 years ago, with one of the best, like probably the best player in Iowa State volleyball history, Eleanor Holthouse, we unfortunately ran into Florida, and Florida is a consistently top volleyball program in the SEC, so it was rough to run into them in the second round. We did give them a little bit of a scare, but we weren't able to finish the job. And then against Hawaii, now I didn't expect this because like Hawaii is a really they came out as like a pretty good like they have a really good volleyball program down there. So it kind of
Mm-hmm.
took me by surprise at first. But then I'm like, okay, I would put some respect on the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors because for what they don't have, like for what they have, yeah, they have a pretty solid volleyball program. I know their men's program is like one of the better ones in terms
Yeah.
of college. So overall, I hope this to find this team. Obviously, second round, maybe get into the Sweet 16 because the NCAA volleyball tournament runs similarly to March Madness, where you get the top four teams that get seeded. I think they are the ones that host the region. So I
Mm-hmm.
remember last year it was the Nebraska region, Texas region, Stanford region, and Pittsburgh region. Now, how that works is basically if you're one of those top four teams, you get to host basically all your games until like I think the final four.
Oh.
In the final four, yeah. So imagine being one of those top four teams. You get to basically just sit at home, just you get to basically just be at home and it's just going to feel like a home game for you. And you know how the audience is going to be, especially if you're like a student. Imagine being
Yeah.
able to do that for like perhaps a winter breaks. I Bleav the final four doesn't go on until like maybe finals week or the week before. or the week after finals week before Christmas. So just having that home court advantage is going to do you big favors to give you a better chance on making it a deep run into the tournament.
It's gonna be interesting to see how the season fares for our young Cyclones.
Hmm.
Um, I'm gonna try to make it to some matches this year, especially when I come out for games. Cyclone fans, we need you to fill up Hilton Coliseum. This is also just a sport, just for me personally, that I've always been wanting to learn more about and grow into.
Yeah,
So that's and thank you for your insight, Cody. This was a very, very fun
mhm,
and very interesting episode to learn about, for
absolutely.
especially for a lot of people that are still trying to learn about the game of volleyball.
And yeah, like I said, like if you ever want to like watch pro volleyball, I mean, last season we had the PVF Pro Volleyball Federation, and they usually stream their matches on YouTube, so you can find them. It's pretty accessible for you. And last year, for the Omaha Supernovas, we actually had an Iowa State alum be a part of that team. Just Shaven Lansman is an Iowa
Hmm.
State alum, and she was on the roster for the Omaha Supernovas, who proceeded to um, be one of the best teams in the PVF and actually won the inaugural PVF championship. So, and the fan support for Omaha is just that the state of Nebraska as a whole is really supportive of volleyball and other sports because they, like Iowa, don't have really a pro sports team. So they put all their energy and passion into these college teams, and it
Right.
really is shown like by the attendance numbers and the amount of records they break in terms of attendance numbers and just the team overall they are very appreciative of the support and they really love that a place like Nebraska really supports these like smaller sports. And
Yeah.
also, not to mention, I actually have a couple of other alum that I wanted to give a shout out to. I already gave out a shout out to Eleanor Holthaus. She's currently playing pro volleyball in Germany. I don't remember the name of the team that she's playing for, but she's playing pro volleyball in Germany. She's one of the best, like one of the greatest players just in Iowa State sports. I mean, she was our greatest volleyball player. So at some point, this is a shout out to one of my buddies. Please hang up Eleanor Holthaus's jersey in the rafters, please.
Do it.
And then yep. And then, another player that I wanna mention, and she's also gonna be playing pro volleyball in Omaha. So there's gonna be a second pro league called League One Volleyball, and it's
Hmm.
Candelaria Herrera from the Argentine national team. She was here, like, around the time just before Eleanor, and she was one of the, better players. Like, she's one of the most, like, well-known recognized players to people who are in the know of Iowa State volleyball. So I'm possibly gonna be able to watch multiple pro volleyball games. I mean, we go from Omaha Supernovas to now the Omaha team in League One and getting to support yet another Iowa State alum in Candelaria Herrera.
Yes. Catalina ahead of. I'm excited to watch her. Do we have any Cyclones that will be in the Olympics?
Unfortunately, we did not. I did not see any in the Olympics this year, but I mean, regardless, should be able. Everybody should like have the opportunity to watch the volleyball in the Olympics. I think that can also be like a way for you to really get introduced to
Yeah.
volleyball just in general and understand how it works because the Olympics is obviously the biggest stage for a lot of these like sports that aren't like football or association football, also known as soccer here in the states, basketball and whatnot, like of the big
Right.
four. They're obviously gonna be big. They're obviously gonna be the kingpins here in the states, like,
Sure.
and the biggest like stage is gonna be here in America. But for a lot of these other sports, the Olympics is basically the biggest stage for these athletes. So it's gonna be a really good opportunity for these athletes to represent their nation, and they're gonna be playing their hearts out.
Definitely, for sure. I'm looking forward to watching volleyball. That's usually one of the
Hmm.
most high intensity and very, very exciting sports to watch and
Yep,
on the realm of the Olympics. Well,
absolutely.
um, listeners and clone fans, that's all the time we have today. Um, look forward to our show next week. We thank you for listening. Rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or your podcast provider, and follow us on all of our pages for at at Bleav in Iowa State. So once again, this is Tyler Carter,
This is Cody Vatsilalo.
and we thank you from both of us for listening to the Bleav in Iowa State podcast. Go Cyclones!
Go State.